Good morning, one and all. On behalf of Jyoti Institute of Technology, Department of Civil Engineering, I once again welcome all the participants and Dr. Radhakrishnan sir for the second session of Day 6 AICTE ISTE sponsored 1 week refresher program. Now I request Mr. Suresh YR sir to give a brief introduction about the speaker.
Good morning to all of you. It is my great pleasure
Hello.
in introducing my friend
Hello. Am I
and
audible, sir?
ex-colleague. Sir, I am audible? Sir Radhakrishna sir, am I audible? Sir
Okay.
Radhakrishna
Thank
sir,
you.
am I audible?
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay,
I
sir.
was
Okay,
just
sir. Thank you.
I was just checking to know whether it is
Okay,
working.
sir. So it's my immense
Okay.
pleasure to introduce my friend and ex-colleague, Dr. Radhakrishnan. So Professor Radhakrishnan K has been working in the Civil Engineering Department at NMAM Institute of Technology, NITE, since 1990 February. He obtained his graduation and post-graduation in geology with fifth rank from Calicut University and pursued his research study at Geological Survey of India and received MPhil degree from Mangalore University with first class distinction. He has been awarded with PhD in civil engineering from the prestigious National Institute of Technology Surathkal, working on the integrated geohydrological studies of Mulki River Basin. He is an expert and consultant in groundwater exploration, geophysical surveying, rainwater harvesting, remote sensing and geographic information system, trained at National Geophysical Research Institute, Hyderabad, under UNESCO Fellowship and Indian Institute of Remote Sensing, IIRS, ISRO, Dehradun with NNRMS sponsorship. He is a member of Sakura Science Club Japan and was the lead faculty for the Sakura Student Exchange Program with Ritsumeikan University, Japan during July 2019. He is having more than 34 years of teaching experience at UG and PG level, more than 18 years of research experience in the integrated geohydrological studies, and about 32 years of field experience in geophysical exploration for groundwater and foundation, extended from Kerala, Karnataka, Andhra Pradesh, Tripura to Uttarakhand. He worked as a geological assistant for a short period during 1989 in the groundwater department, Government of Kerala. Located groundwater source in the steep, rough coral limestone terrains of Mussoorie in Uttarakhand using integrated methods of geoinformatics and geophysics for a residential school. 5th century Guru Nanak School at Vincent Hills, Mussoorie, which is claimed to be the first borewell successfully located and drilled using the advanced technology. 3 PhD students are working under him for their doctorate degree at VTU Belagavi. Guided more than 40 undergraduate engineering student projects in various disciplines like electronic and communication, mechanical engineering, information science engineering, biotechnology, and civil engineering, other than a few MTech projects, and received thrice, that is during 2007, 2013, and 2017, the state level Best Project of the Year awards from KSCST Bangalore, and 8 times Best State Projects of the Year awards at college level Expro. As a mentor and guide, Green Porous Concrete Pavement Block KBITS project in 2017. He is in the panel of Board of Examiners for the Doctoral Committee, Karunya University, Coimbatore. He is a consultant for proposed 100-feet monolithic Vivekananda statue, Bailur Ramakrishna Mutt near Karkala, Udupi district, and for the rejuvenation and restoration of 14th century old Ramasamudra Lake in Karkala, Udupi district, which are on parallel lines, pipelines. Published about 20 research papers in the national and international journals and conference proceedings. chaired and co-chaired many national and international conference sessions, and delivered invited talks and keynote addresses other than participating in panel discussions. He was the organizing secretary, convener of International Conference on Emerging Trends in Engineering, ICETE 2014, and the editor of Proceedings of ICETE 2014, Volume 1 and 2, published by Excellent Publishing House, New Delhi. He is a reviewer of 3 international journals, that is, namely Arabian Journal of Geosciences, Springer Publications, Geocarta International, Taylor and Francis Publications, and International Journal of Earth Sciences. He was an advisor to UPSC exams 2018, member LIC Committee 2018-19, VTU Belagavi, chairman and chief coordinator KCST 40th series in 2017. SPP seminar and exhibition held at NITE, resource person for, he is also a resource person for outcome based evaluation and accreditation of NBA, New Delhi, etc. He was the founder coordinator of many of the following activities at NITE, namely Expro Students Project Exhibition since 1991, KCST funded project since 1991 to 2018, and instrumental in bagging Best College of the Year award for 4 times to NMAMIT from KSCST Bangalore, training and placement cell, orientation and induction program for first year students and new faculty, leadership camp for CRs, class representatives elected, NITE Technology and Entrepreneurship for draft committee, ISRO IIRS Outreach Center at NMAMIT since 2016, focal point for ISRO Bhuvan Panchayat Resource Mapping, project-based learning course and geoinformatics lab, etc. He was instrumental in setting up a geoinformatics lab with 40 computers and introducing the first ever project-based learning geoinformatics lab course in the 4th semester for civil engineering students, other than setting up a well-displayed geology museum and lab with computer facilities at NITE. He was the draft committee member and instrumental for preparing a first ever VTU question bank for the environmental studies when the subject was introduced. He is a life member and fellow of many professional bodies in India and abroad, such as Geological Survey Society of India, Indian Society of Remote Sensing, Indian Society for Technical Education, Indian Society of Systems for Science and Engineering, Society of Earth Scientists, Indian Association of Hydrologists, etc. As an internationally certified freelance soft skill trainer, that is head trainer, and training designer, JCI Excel from JCI University, Chesterfield, USA, and a national trainer of Junior Chamber International India, he has conducted more than 900 soft skill training events throughout South Indian states from Maharashtra to Tamil Nadu since 1998. He is also a certified EDP and HRD facilitator from CLHRD, AIM Insights, HRD Institute, Mangalore. He was the past ZVP, Zonal Vice President and Zone Coordinator for Training, Junior Chamber International India, Zone 15, and Director, JC's English Medium School, Karkala, during 2014-2020. So this is a brief introduction of Dr. Radhakrishnan. So he has got a lot of credits to him. So now I request Dr. Radhakrishnan to give his seminar on the topic geophysical investigations and applications in civil engineering. So it's our great pleasure for inviting you for this seminar, and I hope the participants will definitely get benefit out of this. And if there are any queries, please post it in the chat box. So I will hand over the session to Dr. Radhakrishnan. So Dr. Radhakrishnan, sir, please.
Thank you, sir. Sorry, in between there was a net issue. I think I don't know what happened. Now, I think I am audible now and visible.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Hello.
Yes, sir. You are audible, sir.
Okay, thank you. Sorry for the interruption, sir, which happens. I think my slide is also visible.
Yes, sir. Your slides are also visible.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for the opportunity, and good morning to everybody. And I couldn't attend any of the programs so far because I was a bit busy and I was down by health also. Okay, this a topic which is very significant for civil engineers has been, I think, neglected so far. because geophysical explorations and applications are very much important because of the time factor, the cost saving, and the fastness in doing the things, because we can deduce much things before starting the real work, from the foundations to the maintenance. So through my few slides, I will go through it. I'll just try to convince you how we can better utilize the geophysical explorations for the civil engineering aspects. So here there is a picture you can see. A particular thermogram reveals the rate at which energy is radiated by a cat. Look at the different parts of it, and at the same time, the nose of it. It is very cool and a blue color. So it shows that. I just want to show you another picture also here. This is a rattlesnake's which is having a thermal radiation detectors. Even night times they can see it. Infrared photography, we talk about that. I just want to impress you and want to tell you that there are so many physics principles, or in the electromagnetic waves system, there are so many wave ranges which we are not used, or we are not found out the specific sensors for utilizing these things. So we have a lot of physical abnormality around us, with the physics principle talk about whether it's gravity or magnetic or electric or electromagnetic or resonance. There are so many such factors. So whether these factors can be, these physics simple principles can be utilized for civil engineering problems. That's what the question. So there is a lot of scopes. So far, what we have found out and utilized for the civil engineering or in geophysics is very, very less. So there is a lot of scope. That's what I just want to impress you. But we are not utilized because we are not aware of these things many times. So why geophysical diagnosis or geodiagnosis? Now, usually when we start with the foundation problems, etc., geotechnics is the main problem, because it's not a regional understanding. In geotechnics, it's a local understanding at the particular place. A sample will collect, either in situ test will conduct, or we'll take a sample from there and analyze in the lab and so. But it gives you only that particular, because each and every site is unique and it varies from place to place. So in geotechnical analysis, you will get it's just like a skin study for analysis. Whereas in the geophysical analysis, what you are doing is a scanning and X-ray. You go to a medical doctor first, in order to identify your problems, she will deeper organ study. We say in geology, what is happening inside deeper. That can be understood only by a proper understanding of the geology. Why this phenomenon on the surface is discussing like this. But geophysics will help you in understanding without much cost. As I told you, this is a scanner, like it's a non-destructive test. Just like the scanner study and X-ray, what we conduct, the geophysical study will help us for that. That's why geodiagnosis or geophysical diagnosis more important in almost all the civil engineering aspects, whether it is a bridge, whether it is a tunnel, whether it's a dam foundations, whether it is a multi-rise buildings foundations, or it's a concrete structure in order to want, or it's a road construction we have done, whether the road is properly laid, sub-base and base and all these things, whether it is proper, or a rock you are having, whether this monolithic structure is having a proper, any fracture inside. All these things can be detected using the simple principles of the geophysics. So I'm going to talk my lecture for next 1 hour 50 minutes or so. What is geophysics and why? I'm not going to do much on that, but give you a brief introduction of what is geophysics and why geophysics in civil engineering. Then various geophysical methods used in civil engineering, especially electrical sensitivity. I'll be stressing on it because I have done a bit of work on that more. And gravity anomalies, magnetic anomalies, or electromagnetic methods, or magnetic resonance methods. One of the latest methods which I found to utilize for the groundwater, directly you can use this. And VLF and VHF methods, very low frequency and very high frequencies, using the radio waves, marine radio waves, etc., utilized for this, or ground penetrating radar, then seismic waves reflection as well as seismic refraction methods. So all these things in a nutshell, I'll just talk about what are this method and what are type of things we use, not in elaborate. But I will touch upon that this electrical resistivity, especially for the foundations, or sometimes for the earthing, for not to understand earth resistivity for power plants or industrial structures, etc. Or some work which I carried out in Mangalore Port Trust for the 18th berth for the rock exposures there, up to what depth the rocks you are getting, or some of the studies for the rainwater harvesting, whether it's a feasible site for rainwater harvesting, because the water has to go inside and store it, whether it is feasible. So some studies, and some of the studies which I conducted from different parts of the states, including some tomography studies I conducted in Vincent Hills, Missouri, for a groundwater. The first time it was done scientific explorations, and we drilled it and we got a good amount for. Then some standard penetration tests and values correlated with the resistivity values, and this I'll be dealing in a bit more. Then a conclusion. This is how I structured this, and I'll hope that I can finish it within time, or I'll do it as much as possible. So why choose physical diagnosis is, as I told you, from site characterization to the foundation quality assurance, because this is for any tall structures, this is a must for it. And it's a very important thing is it's a non-destructive test. All other tests which you are doing in civil engineering, we collect the samples, bring it to the lab and test it, and it is destructive types of tests. But this is a non-destructive test, and very important for the geotechnical projects. And it will give the analysis of the changes in the complex surfaces, the foundation base, whether it's a Burj Dubai or the Adel Tunnel, which are in Madhya Pradesh, which are constructed recently and opened for that. Whether it is whatever it is. So the foundation base of it, why the Leaning Tower of Pisa is still leaning, because of the foundation problem there. So if there was a study conducted, probably they would have saved this. Then rational use and protection of the water, land, mineral, and energy resources, because to map it, sometimes dump the material we will not be knowing. Similarly, one case here happened in Lamina Industries. They were dumping the waste for the last 40 years or so. All the foundries sand after the things they have been dumping. And to understand how much depth and vast expansion it is there. Sometimes geophysical survey will help you for that. We are used another method for that. I'm not discussing that method here. Anyway, then ultrasonic investigation helps in structural imaging of this. This is the latest technology for the concrete structures, etc. Whether the proper concreting is done, to understand that it can be used this. So we can see that, to create a geological model of the site before starting the foundations or erecting the structures, we should understand the composition of the material structure, the site conditions, the groundwater conditions, etc. Geophysical studies will help you for that. And similarly, the boundary conditions of the geological processes as well as geological hazard. So in total, we can say that not to make a model or not to understand the entire things in a three-dimensional things, I can say that adding this to geographical information system in a 3D model, we can create it, and I'll show you some of the picture what we have done for that. So this is the advantage. This is the methods which we can adopt for investing in money, because most of the cases the civil engineering projects will not be having much money for this foundation, and you have to drill it here and there, and you will not get a better idea of it. So what is the need of the hour? A blend of the best and the best. So from the starting from the foundations to erecting the structures, as I told, it's applicable, whether it's concrete or foundations or anything. So virtually every structure is supported by soil rock, because such a huge structure, whether it's a tunnel, whether it's a dam or reservoir, whether it's a multi-story building, let it be anything, we can see that it's either resting in a soil or in a rock. So we should understand that. And the current and future geocharacterization, seismic piece of ground penetrometer testings, seismograph, resistivity meter, dialectrometer. There are so many such methods and statistical analysis and numerical methods we are adopting with computerization methods. Now, look at this picture of this. Suppose this is exposed to you on the surface. So what you would have seen? You would have seen a very hard granitic rock on the top surface. This is what we are seeing from the surface, right? But if you can understand what is below, you can see that there is a highly weathered zone here, and there is a moisture in the weathered zone here. So from a surface, without digging into this, because digging will cost you a much. Okay, so preliminary survey, the cost of funding will not be that much. So for that, if you conduct a geophysical electrical sensitivity survey or the ground penetrating radar running on about it, we can get a tomography, or we can create a 2D or 3D a picture of what is below the ground. As we can see right now, a 2D picture of it. So this we can, and a 3D we can create. Before doing any explorations or blasting it, before doing a drilling operation, geophysical exploration will help you with a very meager cost. That's an advantage, because drilling will cost you much, and drilling will take a lot of time. Because I have an experience of doing such drillings for the Vivekananda statue. Suresh was mentioning about that, and we have drilled it many places. Because one thing is in a hard rock, because I was not having a GPR and vertical vertical survey, sometimes it's not possible in some places also, depending upon the terrains. So there are some no setbacks for these methods also. But geophysical methods, integrated different methods, if you use it, it's all possible before digging or exploring further here, and without much cost you are going to do it. So is the bedrock deep or shallow? Who will answer for this? A geophysical method will tell you. Is the bedrock highly weathered or competent rock? Again, a geophysical studies will, a resistivity survey or the ground penetrating radar studies, such things will tell about you. Or whether it is a soft or dense, a magnetic survey may tell you that. Where are the fine grained, the coarse grained sediments for your coarse aggregates or finer aggregates which want to use it? It can be told by a geophysical surveys. Where are the best places to drill or excavate and sample the ground? Because again, that's a problem. In a wide area, how many sampling locations should be there? Where should you put the borehole so that you'll get the exact little of which represents the entire area? I'll show you some one or two something like this in my slides also. So the cost-effective geophysical surveys is the best answer for all these questions which you are going to pose before starting any work. So it is typical parameters of interest to designers and engineers. Usually the thickness and extent of layers. How much is the thickness of this particular layer? And the physical properties of this, the bearing properties, sharing strength, all these things we test, bring it in the lab and test all these things. Okay, so recently we are getting some samples from Karwar offshore. They are going to have some constructions, and they brought the samples here, the soil as well as the rock samples for the testings. So if you can conduct geophysical surveys and get an idea about it, at what depth the foundation is there, it will be highly helpful before doing all these things, because it will supplement the things what you are going to, because whatever there below, it is only an interpretation. Unless and otherwise you directly see it and collect it. That's why there is no substitute for direct sampling of the ground. So, but at the same time, you remember that drill sparingly, maximum avoid that drilling, because it will create an environmental problem also. So, but the engineering geophysical survey will give an indirect evidence to many engineering properties of the covered materials beneath the surface, and it reduces the need to drill or excavate test pits. What is finally the cost is reduced and the time is reduced, and you are going to minimize the environment. So ultimately, it is not the 1D picture. As you can see here you are going to get a 2D picture of this. And you can create, instead of a fence diagram, you can create a 3D-dimensional picture of it, correlating, because along the different directions, you can take these profiles and you can create that. So this all possible thanks to the advanced geophysical studies, and even you can find out where there is a groundwater, in which area it is. All these things can work. What will be the resistance of this area? Whether you can put a earth link for a thermal power or a power plant or a power stations or a railway, lines, etc. We can think of where it can be shallow area. We can put this. So each site is unique, and site investigation and assessment, very important in primary stage, as you know very well. And foundations, whether in materials of construction, water resistivity, groundwater, soil thickness, weak zones in tunneling, fault zones in reservoir sites, then the weakness in road laying, underground pipelines and cables. Sometimes it is not possible because if they preserved a record of it, probably this many times we can say when the road construction is immediately after road construction, they will cut break and put a pipeline, and that will be damaged. So underground pipelines and cables, weakness of fissures in concrete roads, all these things can be identified. Then equally importance like geotechnical engineering, rock mechanics, geological engineering, pavement engineering, water and environment engineering, all these fields, this geophysics can be utilized. And you save time, as I told you, unnecessary excavations, and it ensures the quality as well as the speed. So, and reduce the number of conventional rigor, and you can save a lot of cost and time, and it increase the effectiveness of the projects. So it provides the information with the conventional civil engineering method was hard to determine due to concern of money, time, and quality. Now, as I told you, there are so many, I can list it many things, maybe from starting from the foundation designs, mapping overburden and soil thickness, then volumetric calculation of the fill material or construction fill, how much has to be filled up, or characterizing the what is the geology beneath the waterways so that we can optimize the pipeline crossings there. Then potentially hazardous abandoned mine workings, how much volume area, whether it will leak from the leachate will follow in which directions, surveys for construction aggregate mapping, then seismic hazard evaluations, dam and levee assessment, permafrost mapping, and locating buried utilities. For all these things, because many times these utilities will be buried and there is no record available. Sometimes if you have a geophysical instruments, especially GPR, etc., because it is easy to use, just drag it along the ground and you get the 3D, 2D picture of the bottom, and you can understand what are the buried utilities, etc. So it is less expensive, less invasive, less time consuming, and provide a large scale characterizations of the physical properties, that also in undisturbed conditions. You can see many of the times when we collect the samples in geotechnical applications, it is a disturbed conditions. The sample will be collected and it will be brought to lab. Locate and explore the characteristics such as depth, thickness, extension, resistivity of minerals, rocks, water, soil, subsurface layers, all these things. Then locating in underground cavities are the backfilled mine shafts and dissolution features. Then determine the stiffness properties of the ground. Then, because you can see that sometimes the resistance will be vary depending upon the stiffness of the materials. Then a integrated approach with the conventional methods will enhance the project. So potential, as I told you, potential of geophysics and engineering are to be realized, and the application of these techniques are still to be fully utilized. So now let us look at the different geophysical methods. This brief introductions about why geophysics and what is it, and what are these geophysical methods. So we can broadly classify into two categories: surface methods and subsurface methods. So in surface methods, mainly whatever method we can conduct it on the surface, no going down inside the earth or soil. So gravitational method, sensitive gravimeter you can use, and Boger anomalies we can detect and find out, because from place to place there is a variations in the gravitational pull depending upon the density of the material. So with this we can make out, because when water is there, it is less dense material, so it will be giving, or hollow things are the less dense materials are the can be identified easily for the foundation as well as the groundwater exploration, etc. Then electrical method is another one. Resistivity is the methods which we can, self potential is there, now induced potential is there. So there are different methods. Mainly it is electrical conductivity or resistivity is utilized for this, and magnetic properties of the material, because if a fresh rock is there, it will be having varying magnetic properties because of the different types of the minerals present in that. But a weathered material will be having a different magnetic, because magnetic properties will be changing, or a hematite to magnetite, when they change it, the magnetic properties will be enhanced. So this way we can identify it, and most of the materials, sometimes it's an indirect method which we use, a dike or a fracture zone, etc. I will show you some picture and you will understand that, some of the slides. Then radioactive methods we can use it. we can put some tracers and trace it, understanding the properties of it, the groundwater flow, etc. There's seismic methods, which is largely used mainly for the subsurface exploration of the oil exploration. Mainly, we are using, and groundwater also it is used, and so seismic reflection and refraction methods. The subsurface explorations, after drilling, you have some test holes, etc. You can put gamma log or the radioactivity log, etc., so that you can understand inside what is happening, or even nowadays the borehole cameras are also available for the subsurface exploration. If it is caliper logging, caliper will accept. So depends upon the material inside, caliper will be enhancing or reducing. That shows the hardness of the material, etc. So these are the different types of the methods used in geophysics. So basically, we can see that physical properties such as density, magnetic susceptibility, elasticity, electrical conductivity, radioactivity, etc., are made use of in geophysical methods. So wedlock between physics and geology are for geological problems. So physical parameters, simple physical principles, physics principles. So one is, as I told you, gravity. It will be varying from place to place depending upon the density of the materials, and it can be utilized, as I told you, porous materials or the water if it is having less density. So Boger anomalies are detected. Sensitive gravimeters are used for this. Then another one is the magnetic method. It is, as I told you, it's an indirect method. A dike or a fracture zones can be identified because a dike will be having a lot of magnetic particles, and there is a sudden variation in the value of distance. So there are two instruments: flux gauge magnetometer, bottom pressure magnetometer. I have used bottom pressure magnetometer. It is a very simple thing which handheld, you can portable, it can take. Then seismic methods, seismic reflection and seismic refraction method, as I told you, we'll discuss that. And electrical methods, we'll discuss in detail about this. SP methods, as you know that below the ground surface, there will be always a movement of the ions, or movement of the electrons is happening because of the movements of the ions. Or cathode to anode, as you know that it is always a constant movement. So there will be a movement of this. So there is a self potential in the ground. When you put two rods there, you can say a voltmeter will be showing a reading, a fluctuation will be there. Or if you hold it in your hand, also the two terminals in a voltmeter, you can see that there will be fluctuation. So there is a potential already, the self potential. So measuring that will be the electromagnetic methods, electrical and magnetic waves. It is traveling in a perpendicular directions. So these methods can be used, electromagnetic methods. Then resistivity methods, as I told you, conductivity or electrical conductivity of the properties of the materials. Many of the sulfide materials are conductive in nature. Many of the ore minerals are non-conductive in nature. When water is there, it will be highly conductive in nature. Saline water is there, still highly conductive in nature. So like that, porous material conductive and less dense material conductive. But when water is added, more conductive, and salt water is added, as you know that the shock, how it will happen, immediately the conductivity. So resistivity will be very low, whereas conductivity will be high. Okay, so these methods can be utilized. Then induced polarization, you send a current and the materials will be polarized for some times, just like the potential, self potential induced there. It will be polarized for water molecules, etc., polarized, and it will come back to regain. It will take a time lag for that to understand. So studying this, we can understand about the materials. Then the well logging, I told, it's a surface methods, spontaneous potential SP methods. You can lower the things and put a resistivity or the log on the top of it, and continuously you can monitor lowering that the fluctuations. Similarly, resistivity, one of the electrodes will be lowered down and another one will be on the surface. So the other one which is lowering, just like when it touches the water, as you know, the circuit will be closed. So this resistivity can be used for calipers, can be used for the logging. Then, as I told you, the radioactive methods also can be used for this. So these are the different geophysical, some of the things we will discuss. So electrical methods of prospecting can be employed in 4 ways, as I told you: SP, self potential; surface potential, that is electrical resistivity method, which is cheap and people use it widely for this. then electromagnetic methods and IP methods. So electrical resistivity method gain on this. So when a current is passing through a material, it will be it will go just like a magnetic waves have your rays you are seeing. Similar way, in a globular way, it will be transmitting from a point where it is impacting. So this is a simple principle, and since it is in the surface, the half portion will be missing. So there is an equation which we used for finding out how to locate this. So this material impact can be taken into consideration, some constant. So electrical resistivity method, there are so many applications. As I told you, we are not much utilizing for the road laying because subways and the thickness of it, whether any fault of this, even GPR can be used for this. So these tomographic things we can produce, two-dimensional things can be produced along the cross section wherever we want, so that it is better. So it is showed that geophysical electrode resistivity method and a dynamic cone method shows very negligible difference, almost similar values. A similar calculation I have made for the SPT standard penetration test and the resistivity surveys. So these methods will give the thickness of the surface cores, base cores, and sub-base cores, and subgrade cores, etc. We can do a survey and find out. So how much they are, whether the concrete or these of the materials they used in proper thickness. Because once it is covered, you will not be understand, but we can do it. So most of the cases they put a hole and take the samples and take it, but non-destructively we can do this test without disturbing this. That's what I do. And this is just in many places. In Bokaro Steel Plant, they used to delineate bedrock configurations, and in Andhra Pradesh, in atomic power plant, they used for the nature and position of the quartzite and find out the thickness of the quartzite. And some places, accuracy of the borehole drilling test, it's almost find it. And I will tell you an example here. I'll show you later. ERM has been extensively used as a in B surplus project in Madhya Pradesh to thickness of overlaying alluvial deposit to find out. Then it has been used in hydro projects to detect the forms, clay beds, caverns, limestone, etc. And the magnetic method, when you talk about, we can see that there is an earth flux, magnetic flux is there, and it varies from equatorial regions to polar regions, depending upon the temperature and other things. So this magnetic flux can be, there will be variation. There is an anomalous will be showing around. We can see that in South India or these portions, it's around 40,000 or 38,000 is the value which we can see passing through this. So now, when you use the magnetic survey, if there is an anomaly in the rock, because this is an usual flux. So using this magnetometer, sensitive magnetometer, when you close an area, you find an anomaly in that you can trace and map it. That will give you a clue, indirect approach. This is what I told you, it's an indirect approach for groundwater, etc. So these are methods. This is a magnetometer, and there's a liquid in the coil is there, and it should be arranged in the north-south directions. There should not be any metallic parts over here. And these instruments can take this. We have conducted in our ground itself. So this instrument will be showing you the different readings. So along these directions, suppose you want to take a profile of it. You are suspecting there is a dolerite dike was there. So in order to find out a dolerite dike, we can say that there is a sudden change in the magnetic flux here, and it goes up, and again there is a sudden change happen where it ends, so that we can mark that there is the, so one or two stretch if you make, even the direction of this alignment of the dolerite dike, we can find it out, or an intrusive body or a boundary of a particular rock type. So this is the setup for that. As I told you, there is a coil here, magnetic coil, and a liquid inside this samples, and this is the instrument setup. And when you can interpret like this also, when a curve you get it, it's a centimeter graph sheet, you can plot it, and you can see the depth also varies. See the widening of this bell-shaped things. So according to depth, it's also widening, right? So similar way, you can interpret a dipping dike, a shallow wide dike, and a fault zones. Sudden abrupt terminations or changes in values can be noticed and can be interpreted. But a little bit of technique. This is one method we conducted in Parapadi, where we have drilled a borehole and held it very high. So that area in initial survey, I rejected that site. So as in one of my friends' site itself, I rejected that site for further drilling, etc. But later we conducted a survey and we found that there is a fracture. So two profile have taken, and I could see here, as I told you, 40,000. Now here it is 35,000. So there's a drastic change in the value here. And whereas in this case, you can see that it is 41,000 to almost 40,200. There's not much variations, but here it shows very significant. Then this place we conduct the vertical distributed survey. So first, initially it was the marked by lineaments from the satellite imageries or Google Earth. We marked this and we identified the area and conducted the survey here. And one of the things I found that it is there, and we put a borehole and the vertical electrical sounding conducted, we could get the surface. Another one is electromagnetic method with sophisticated methods, mainly elastic or electromagnetic waves are used. And geophysical hydrocarbon exploration, this method has been used widely. So this is airborne electromagnetic surveys. Transmitter is located here, and you can see in midway a magnetometer and a receiver will be there. So it will be inducing a thing, and if the conductor body is there, just like the water or air body and like this, there will be another field will be, because electrical and magnetical field, it will perpendicular in directions, and automatically there will be another field created and induced fields, and a secondary field we can measure and it can be understood. The variations can be understood. These are recent methods which I have seen in, I think just before Corona starts, I was thought of training in that, and I went to CGWB in Bangalore. They purchased one instrument and they were also in the preliminary stage of understanding that. But unluckily, due to the Corona, I couldn't continue that. And they're having this. So magnetic resonance method they used. It's a direct method for detecting groundwater. There's not much time involved in this. So what happened in this case is water will be in natural equilibrium, water molecules towards the magnetic north, they will be there. And when the current is sent, what happened is they will be polarized. So transmit specific frequency, excite the water. They will be excited and will be shifting the polarization from them. So these polarizations to return back, it will take time. So when you send a current, stop it, and depending upon the depth you want to penetrate, that much time you can, how much amperes and how much penetrations, how long durations you can decide. And this based upon that, then it will take turn back. So signal will be, automatically reversing back after some time. So this time we have to take the water stands with the magnetic signal recorded on the surface during come back to the equilibrium. So these properties can be utilized, and what it is used here is a big loop will be a rectangular loop will be created, a square loop will be created out of the wires and put it on the ground, and you send the current and it will be creating a the resonance, it will be created here, and as I told you, it will be charged. The protons will be in the water molecules will be charged. This suppose is the water layer, and the energizing pulse goes and the resonance it will be coming back and recording the instruments, and it's a bit interesting things. And this time will decide. So there is a depending upon the depth of penetrations, this 1 to 3 kilohertz or something you can, or 40 milliseconds time you will be sending the currents of very this one, and noise can be eliminated. Now what happened is, once you stop it the current, the dead time about 35 milliseconds, it will start regaining back the molecules. So a relaxation signal will be coming, right? And based upon that, we can interpret. So look at this, the pulse moment and the curve we can understand. So this shows a very shallow one as it is shown. Whereas a deeper one, you can see that the pulse moment is gradually taking place and increasing. And say there is a shallow and deeper, say combination of these two things you can see here. So similar way, there is a medium aquifer. So look at the curve. Based upon the curve, the pulse moment and the signal plotted in the x and y axis, we can interpret the thickness of the aquifers. So this is how it is. The porosity and permeability can be understood, and the thickness, etc., can be predicted based upon the value which we get here. I'm not much familiar with this because, as I told you, I just know that and just introduced instruments, but couldn't do a field survey for that. But I found it very interesting to this, and you can see that resistivity and magnetic resonance signals. There is a difference, because in magnetic resonance signal, these loop methods, even dry, it can be easily found out using the curves, the pulse moment and the signal curve. When you look at, you can see the signals will be very low here, whereas here the very high signals you are getting, and the pulse also is when the time increase for longer duration it is there, whereas it will be only for shorter durations, and it will be low. So, but in the resistivity methods, what is happening is that we can't find out whether it's a sandstone is wet or sandstone is dry. So it will make not much difference here. But again, it depends upon the interpreters who is experienced can do it. So this can be used in another method. So here you can say dry area and one. Here you can see in dry area the signals, the depth. This is a depth factor here. So depth, you can see that there is not much signals out. But in the wet area, aquifer area, look at the this pulses, it's going on increasing, one thing. And second thing is you can see that this water content is increasing. Water content is increasing like this, and it shows. So permeability also it's increasing down. So this shows a very good aquifer zones. It's a very high permeability, very good aquifer zones. That indicates by the water content also here. So by that way, it can be decided what depth this one, because high permeability, high aquifer content, or the porosity is there, and transmissivity also, because that depends upon the thickness. So aquifer thickness, so yield can be predicted easily from these methods. Then another one is the ground penetrating radar, the GPR, the exploration technique that use certain very simple instrument which you can drag it along the ground, either a belt or a handle will be there like this, and a cable lines or a fault or anything can be easily, because it's just like a scanning image what you are seeing down below. So it can be used, it's mainly used as the seismic reflection techniques, and the depth of penetration varies depending upon the antenna. This antenna length, how long, and the strength of the antenna depends upon the depth of penetrations will be varying. So I found that this can't be utilized for very deeper things, but for a road study, etc., it is very easy, I feel, because it's a shallow depth. So some of the foundations, etc. This is enough, more than enough. We can use it. So archaeological studies, forensic science, pipelines or buried objects, geology and hydrology, engineering construction foundations, highway road surface analysis. All these things we can use these methods. So the image is like this. You can see that very easily you can handle. Only thing is some surface corrections may not, you have to do it. There are softwares available for that. So some undulations that you have to make it flatten, etc. But once you do that, you can see that this is a bedrock topography, how a dumped material you can understand, and water channel if it is there, understand. All these things, or a buried material, all these things you can identify using this reflection of the electromagnetic profiling techniques. It is 10 gigahertz to 1.5 gigahertz. Frequencies are used mainly for this, and it varies, as I told you, the antenna. So quality assurance in foundation engineering can be given by this method, checking foundation elements, and because it's not accessible visual inspection, but this it can be done. There are small changes in construction material, concrete mixture, whether it's proper, you can understand. Passive seismic interferometric techniques are used for ultrasonic transmissions and tomographic studies. We can do it and understand whether the masonry constructions or the concrete constructions are the proper, or any mistake is there. Then moisture and corrosion detection also possible using these techniques. Then structural investigations allow the detection of the rebar and other elements at depths greater than those accessible by conventional eddy currents methods. You can see that instead of eddy currents instruments, you can carry this. Then checking foundation elements, its geometry, integrity, and durability. Then better directions rate for the metallic objects than ultrasonic methods. It can be used because this will not be having any problem with the metallic objects. Then spectral analysis surface space. Then multi-station analysis surface space can be utilized. Allows effective pseudo 2D imaging of the shear wave velocity. Then quality assurance in foundation engineering. Then passive seismic interferometric techniques for tomography, etc. Now another one is the seismic methods, which widely used for the exploration for the oil exploration, etc. I'll just run through it because main topic is still remaining. So seismic reflection method and seismic groundwater exploration, mainly seismic refraction method is utilized, and whenever the wavefront water body or something is the a boundary is there, it will be reflected as well as refracted depending upon this elastic medium. So that can be utilized for this. So there are so many advantages for groundwater table, weakness zones, etc., etc. I'm not going into much into that. So seismic propagation of the types of artificial generated waves in the ground. So then refraction methods, a charge or a weight or a drop hammer, it is there, and geophones will be connected in different distance, and the time to reach there will be taken considerations, and we can calculate the depth of the body which is there. So this is the methods. So each of these velocity time lag which is reaching the primary to secondary waves, that time lag we can plot it out and beyond below two, and we can find out the depth of each of this wavestype. Then reflection of the methods, that is mainly in the buried channels, groundwater table portions, then fissured crust zones, porosity estimation, etc., etc. Then we'll come to the main thing is the electrical methods. So usually the electrical methods, one problem is that we need a straight line for laying the wires. That is one problem, because the potential electrodes and current electrode should be laid in a one single line. And some places cities etc. will not be possible. So we can put it one current electrodes in infinity, or dipole methods or something like that. There are different configurations are there, but mainly used configuration I will discuss here. This is one Tripura I was doing survey. This is in Vincent Hills in Missouri. Very steep area, which is very tough terrain, because actually I have to locate the groundwater just above this. There is a steeply very high place. There is no possibility. It is a 5th century Guru Nanak residential school there I have to conduct. But just below there is a road I found, and I could find out this because you can imagine Himalayan terrain. It is very steep. Then this road is over. So that's the situation. So electrical methods, resistivity, inherent physical properties of substance. So resistance offered, resistivity and resistance, there is a difference. So resistance offered for the flow of the electric current by unit cube of a substance is called as the resistivity. And there are good conductors, pyrite, chalcopyrite, etc. So many of the sulfide minerals are good conductors, but majority of the ore minerals are poor conductors. Water is a good conductor. So that is one advantage we can. Then it all depends upon the mineralogy, porosity, saturation, and quality of the saturating fluid. As I told you, if it is highly saturated, high conductivity. If it is highly saturated with salt water, still high conductivity. I have an experience in the NITK beach when survey was conducted. All of the 5 instruments we are tested, there all failed because no reading was shown. Then I thought the instruments failed, but when I went back to the lab and checked, it is working. The thing was, even it can't read the reading. That was the resistivity, that was the high conductivity. There is no resistivity offering for this. So we can find out using these equations, because there is a difference between resistivity and apparent resistivity. Resistivity is what we are getting with the instruments when we record in the field, that is resistivity. But apparent resistivity is depending upon the material or the geometry of the material which you are taking. That we have to have a factor should be introduced into that. So 2 pi a is the factor introduced into that to multiplied with the resistance which we got. So this depends upon the geometry of the materials. So this is how it is derived. So if you take a wire of length like this resistance, you can see that always we know that on flow, etc. So here resistance is directly proportional to length and inversely proportional to the area of cross section. That is why in the wires, in the transmission wires, etc., they are using twisted wires, because transmission loss can be reduced because area of cross section is more, the transmission loss can be reduced. And it depends upon the material also, right? And so the resistance offered by a copper wire and aluminum wire is different. So resistance offered by different materials is different and it varies. So this can be calculated, this can be found out using certain methods here that we are going to discuss. And you can see that how it is varying. Say semi-saturated resistivity, look at more will be there, but fully saturated less. So saturation is one thing. Then saturated with fresh water, more resistivity, but saline water still less. If it is consolidated, more resistivity will be than unconsolidated, less resistivity. So this gives a clue for what type of material will be below, and these are certain materials. And these are instrumentations, AC meter, DC meter. Nowadays, dual mode resistivity meter, both the things AC and DC, we can send it. Why we are using it? Because DC current, when you say it, the potential, as I told you, cell potential will be developed. Because of the flow of this current, the current will not pass further flow in a direct current because it will be blocking because of the ionization of that. And in order to avoid that, what has to be used? A copper rods in a copper sulfate solution. So there will be a constant flow of ions from here to here because of the same sulfur. So cation to anions, this one will be flowing. So this can be utilized in the DC meters, the methods. So this is there are two types of methods. One is vertical electrical sounding, which we call as VES, and other one is profiling or traversing, scanning at a strength in different places along the line. That is called as the profiling or traversing. It goes up to 50-60 meter depth, depends upon how far we are facing the current cables. So this is a vertical electrical sounding. It's Schlumberger arrangement when the configuration. So the electrodes, potential electrodes will be very close to this instrument, 0.5 meter or something, or 1 meter. That will be varying after sometimes. But we can say very close, it will connect to this point where I am surveying, and the current electrodes will be put far away. And gradually the distance of current electrodes will be increased, where the potential electrodes will be kept constant. This is one method. And the other one is the Werner electrical sounding. This is Schlumberger configuration. In Werner configurations, all these distance will be equal. That means the two potential electrodes distance will be equal to this distance and this distance. All electrodes, that is a Werner configuration. But most of the time we use this methods in these areas because it is easy to the time save, because all the 4 electrodes has to be changed otherwise in Werner. Whether here only 2 electrodes has to be changed, this has this. So this is the arrangement in a straight line, it should be arranged. So it will give the promising potential aquifers and saturated zone, and the quality of the water also can be. So in profiling or traversing, what happened, the setup, it will be in such a way that you will set up the whole things, M and N or P1 and P2 and C1 and C2. The whole setup will be changed from one. Then this will be shifted here, this will be shifted here, these two potential electrodes will be shifted. So gradually you can see that whole things will be shifted, or it will be fixed at 2 ends, C1 and C2, and only the potential electrodes will be. That's a gradient methods. That's also a type of the profiling. But we want to know only fixed depth we are interested. So we'll be changing that in a fixed depth. Whereas this will be in giving you different depths in the depth. So after profiling, you can identify there is a fracture or intrusion or something is there. This method can be used. So this is electrical methods. I'm not going to the detail of the derivations because time is less here. So, but we can understand there is a how it is derived here. So whenever a current is sent, there will be a equipotential lines will be created around this current electrodes. And we are measuring, this is the point, center point of this will be the place where I want to put the bore well or a open well, or the foundations I want to know this, the materials, etc. So this is the place I am interested, line I am interested, buffer I am interested. So current will be sent here, naturally current will be going like this, and an equipotential lines will be. So what happens is V by I is equal to R, that's Ohm's law. The as a result of the current, there will be a potential will be developed in between. So that sensitive voltmeter we are using and measuring it, then we can find out the, so I we know and V we know, so that we can find out V by I is equal to R multiplied by the this factor, then we'll K, that is a K, how it is find out is 1 by AM minus 1 by BM minus 1 by AN plus 1 by BN. That is simple, as you can see here. Yeah. We'll come to that. So water bearing formations, it can be the contrast can be fresh and water and so on, weathered, hard rock, etc. And it depends upon the density, porosity, pore size. So in total, we can understand by looking at the value and the curve, we can interpret the bottom as well as the formations type. That is what, and it varies with the temperature also. And you can see that igneous and metamorphic rocks are very high, the values 10 raised to 2 to 10 raised to 8 ohm meter. I will show you some of the examples. Sedimentary and unconsolidated, look at that, the values are very less. And because it's a porous environment. So porosity impact and hardness have high values. Sometimes laterite terrain, the current will not go at all. So we have to pour some salt water in the current electrodes so that current will be good. Otherwise, it will not transmit also. So such problems also will be there, that feedback. So this is an analytical derivation just which I was talking about. So when a current is sent here, what will happen is around that it will be a spherical equipotential lines will be created like this. It's just like a spherical things, flow plan. And this radius, that's have an influence. So the spherical equipotential lines and the current lines, it flows like this from one to the positive to negative. So the resistance R. So when a current I is passed to the ground using this direction perpendicular to equipotential surface, it will be a sphere of radius R will be created. So the resistance R due to current embedded in the ground, it is proportional to, as I told you, 1 by 4 pi R square. That is the materials that for 2 by R. And so now again, I am not going into much of this, but we can understand that V by I is equal to R, and R is nothing but the rho by 4 pi R. Since it is a half, because it is not a complete globe, it is going only hemispherical. So we are taking it as 2 pi R. So this is how it is derived it, and this is how the Schlumberger configuration when you take this R1 and R2. This is what we have done, right? Potential due to A, this current at M at the point this here. What will be the potential created by A at M? What will be the potential created by B at M? And what will be the potential created N at due to A and at N due to B? And this is derived here. It is due to M. It is I by rho into 2 pi R1. And similar way at B at because of the due to B at M, it is minus I by P, I rho divided by 2 pi R2. So the net potential is calculated here, right? This minus this. So this minus this. So finally, you will get an equations. Delta V is equal to Vm minus Vn. That is voltage at M minus at voltage at N. That is the difference, potential difference between this potential electrodes and that is I into rho by 2 pi, and whatever we are done. Rho 1 minus 1 by rho 2 minus 1 by rho 3 plus, because minus into minus plus 1 by rho 4. So this is from this things we have derived that. So finally, rho A is equal to K into delta V by 2. This is a constant factor which are derived right now, the AB by 2. It depends upon the configurations. It will be varying this value. A by 2 minus Mn by 2 the whole square divided by Mn for the Schlumberger configurations. It varies for the other one. So Venner arrangement. So finally we got rho A, because it's all equal, 2 pi A, V by A is equal to R, what we are getting 2 pi A we derived from that. Similar way for the Schlumberger configurations, it is pi into L by 2 the whole square, which we are derived right now here. L by 2 the whole square divided by this AB by L by 2. So Mn by 2 is this, V by 2 the whole square divided by B into V by A. This is R. So this reading we are getting in the field, and this factor we have to constant, we have to multiply by that. We get the apparent resistivity instead of the true resistivity what we are getting. So this will be plotted in different ways. So you can use the master curves. Orland and Mooney is the Bible for that. There are different master curves are the, we have to match. It's a tedious process. And computer modeling is what we use nowadays. Initially, we used all these things, but interactive computer modeling or inversion methods computer using, we can feed the data. So a synthetic curve will be produced with the original curve which is plotted, and it will be, you have to match it, which is coming very close to that. That will be taken. That is the method here. Inverse slope methods. This is method very easy, and softwares are available. And Ramanujacharya PhD thesis, he was working earlier as a scientist in the National Geophysical Research in Hyderabad. He trained me during very long back in 1990. So I use this inverse slope method because easy also. The other methods also we use it because softwares are costly. Direct slope methods can be used and other approximate things. So look at this is the curve finally get. So we are plotting the depth. Okay, the AB we are plotting the AB by 2 from the central point to the current electrodes is called as the AB by 2. And here the resistance which you are getting. So say for 10 meter, 1 meter I am taking 10 meter. I am interested only open well, I will take only up to 20 meter. So this will be plotted in a double log sheets. It will be plotted. So when I plot this, you can see one curve I plot. The values going on, it's a homogeneous curve here. Values going on decreasing here, and it's increasing. So if it comes to 45 or more, it shows hard rock. So if you are looking for a foundation, so what you have to do, when you conduct a survey, if you are interested in foundations where the hard rock starts, where I have to put the pile or the foundation up to this will help you, because where it starts, that will be the point where it starts the hard rock. So 45-degree inclinations. So this shows that row 2, that is the second layer resistivity, is less. And this one is, so it can be for an open well also, because here the values pulled down towards. Whereas in this case, it's a type of curve, very hard rock going on increasing, no water in this. Whereas here in this case, the Q type of curve, values, the row values going on, apparent resistivity values going on down, pulling down. That means it will be a saline water if it's deeply pulled down. It will be shallow if it is very close, and it depends. And whereas this one is the type of K type of curve, value goes up, a hard rock you'll find, topsoil you'll find, then a hard rock you'll find, then you'll say a fractured zone or a well where the water is available. So this is how the informations can be interpreted using the curve. So curve matching. So this is a resistivity plotted in y-axis. It's a double log sheets, and distance depth or the L/2, say central portions to the current electrodes. One of the current electrodes is this. So when I plot this, if it is a homogeneous rock, throughout it will be same. There is no variations. The depth varies, no increase or decrease. But that is a homogeneous rock. There is no water, but you can go for a good foundation material because there is no much variations here. And here, if you are going for a foundation, this will be the ideal curve because going up, A type of curve. And values are going on increasing. Whereas the Q type of curve, either it will be a saline water or a good aquifer. If it is not a salinity area, it will be a good aquifer or a fracture. And if it goes up and comes down, this is a K type of curve. You can say that topsoil and hard rock is there and good aquifer zones. Water is dripping, you can find here as it is. Right here also water is dripping. So here it is an open well aquifer is there and it's going on in. Now you may get either, if it's a more than 45, you'll get it's a foundation rocks. So this way we can interpret. It's a 3 layer curves, A1, A2, A3 curves. So now some typical curve as I described, A type of curve, S type of curve, K, Q type of curve, etc. Now let's look at this typical resistivity curves in the how interpretation in the Murla and Moni, how curve matching techniques, right? So I'm not going into much into this. This also I'll skip. So as I told you, 55-degree if it is the curve come. Though this is not a hard rock. If it's a bedrock non-fractured, it's a fractured bedrock. Even the values, variations you can say, shifting in the values can be seen, it can be interpreted. So by a little bit of expert, you will understand by just plotting the curve, you can say that where is the water available and what is the thickness, etc. There's no need of interpretation also, but interpretation will give you a much better analysis. So this is the geophysical target zones, fracture zones. Okay, so you can see that how it is being interpreted, the same curve, it's matched and interpreted. And as I told you, how will you understand a dike? You can see that there is a sudden increase in the value, resistivity value, whereas in the fracture zone, the value is going on decrease. So if I am going for a groundwater things, I will look for this type of curves. Okay, and it is plotted in a centimeter. And when it's a dike, this side, this upstream side of the dike, I will prefer a good borewell here. But here there is no water will be there. So this is the things which you have to interpret based upon the geology of the area also. So this is the profile of a dike, etc. I'm just skipping it. So strip resistivity curve. Sometimes in ordinary survey, we will not find a fracture zone, a potential zone, which is very small in thickness, but highly that using the strip resistivity methods, conducting 2-3 layers and minusing that, we can find out the real lineament or a fracture zone, and it will yield you good water. So this is one thing we have conducted in the ground here and drilled it. So here you can see a sudden variation in the value which happens here. So and exactly it has to conduct. So why geophysical explorations? I told there are so many purposes: earthly survey, foundation, detecting lateral changes, detecting faults, detecting groundwater table, groundwater pollution, groundwater underground seepages. You can sewer leakages, subsurface archaeological remains, then subsurface seepage of environment application, exploring subsurface source of mineral ores. All these things are possible here. Yeah. So I'm not going much into detail of it because the time shortage is there. Sir, when should I stop it so that I can arrange my slides? Hello? Sir, am I audible? Suresh,
Yes,
sir.
sir. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Yes,
Yes, sir.
How long I
Sir,
can take?
sir, you can take another 15 minutes, sir.
Okay, okay. Now I'll arrange like this. Okay, thank you. So earthling surveys to detect depth, thickness, and conductivity of, because you can say that nowadays when we put the earthling, we put a pit and we put all the carbon materials, etc., and no earthing will be given. But in power stations and many places, MRP did the survey for that area, because in that area we have to conduct a grid survey and understood that which is a place where they can put the entire, any problems happen, the fault system should go there and the current should immediately absorb. So that we have to find it out. For that purpose, we can use this. So power plants, power stations, electrical railways, then vertical and horizontal changes in the resistivity has to be mapped in that. We can prepare these things. Okay. Then lateral changes in soil properties, profiling techniques, geoelectric sections and contour maps, detecting faults and weaknesses. Groundwater exploration, I already explained. GPRs can be used in shallow, then polluted and seepages water can be found out. Then underground pollutions can be understood. Archaeological remains, buried remains and features can be studied by this. So we can even resistivity log and lithologies comparison is made here. And we found that it's almost matching. This is two examples I have taken from NETE only. So this is one, as I told you, Parapadi, I showed you that where the magnetic profile, it shows the variations. There we conducted survey and I did a drilling matching with this and found that it is almost where I predicted the aquifer, it was there. And it's still yielding, even after a few years, still it is yielding with the same high yield. So I could find out a major fracture zone there. And these are all aquifer zones where I marked the water type of things in between the things. So a multi-fracture and they're all confined aquifer, still it is yielding good. And this is again, let us psychotherapy, our hospital here, psychiatric hospitals, in that we conducted a survey and the water is used. And it was dry almost all the things, but we found a confined aquifer at this depth and the drilling also proved in the same depth. So it is exactly matching. That's what a vertical resistivity will replace your drilling and you can save a lot of cost. Interpretation should be proper. That is important. So this you can put it in a GIS or in a three-dimensional way. You can see that entire Mulki River Basin, my research area, I put this variation in depth bedrock from surface. It's from the best data. That is this data I put it, and you can see that where this low resistivity or depth of the bedrock is very deeper here, where here it is bedrock is very shallow area. So for foundation, etc., you can reach, or where you want to put the borewells or open wells, you can do for this. This is one. So these are the curves. I think the Mulki River Basin itself. See, look at different types of the curves. Here I used IPI2 methods. It's a simple methods, not the inverse logs. But here you can see that each layer is this is a layer with a 45 degree almost, right? So each layer can be interpreted. There's a different type of the layers which I found the best curves types of this, and different type of the layer, 6 type of layers. 6 layers I find maximum in this area, and a statistical analysis can be done, and you can plot it and say that what is the maximum and minimum variations in the resistivity as well as thickness. So each layer by layer, you want, are you interested in top layer only? Okay, look at that. You can plot it. And what is the resistivity? As I told you, earthling and other processes required. And for building also. So what is the thickness of it? You can map it and give it as a map, 3-dimensional map. Second layer, what is the thickness from where it starts? And what is the thickness of the second layer and how it varies from place to place. So a 3-dimensional, 2 parameters I have made it into a 3-dimensional figure. I can give it here because isoresistivity contours are over. Third layer, like this layer wise, I can prepare, and predominantly third layer I found H type of curve, right? And secondly, K type of curves. K type of curve means top layer. this is the common things. And finally, I came to a conclusion, what will be the lithology of this area. As few cases, air types, there is no water indication, very hard rock. At very beginning itself, it starts. Then Q type of curve, saltwater intrusions, some area in Mulki, near Gajani, etc. We saw that. Okay, so this is the fourth layer variation in isoresistivity. So you can understand where you can put the borewell, where the foundations can be put, and what will be the problem, how much of the weathering surface, etc. could be identified. So each layer I put like this, and finally here shows all layers potential aquifers with low resistivity. So thickness range and resistivity zones, minimum to maximum, and whether water is available, which one. So this can be made and interpreted. So these are the resistivity curve types and probable lithology. So you can interpret the lithology as well as whether water is there or not, depending upon the curve types, A type of curve, dry zone. Because as I told you, it goes up. So K type of curve, S type of curve. What will be the soil type? What will be the rock type? Topsoil, dry laterite, weather. So this you can prepare in an area using this method. So I have used this topsoil, porous laterite, granite, fractured granite. Finally, you can see that this is general probable lithology in Mulki River Basin. So I put that hard granite thickness and thickness varies, fractured. So there will be always a top weathered soil. Below that, immediately here it's a laterite. Below that is a lithomardic clay because the weathered material from this. So lithomardic clay is the very huge. Then the weathered granitic gneiss, Puttubadi. Then below that, the fractured granitic gneiss, the basement rocks from the first sea horizon start in soil profiling, and the hard granitic gneiss. This we can prepare in any area where you want to have foundation. You can have a cross section along this like this. You can have this 3D dimensions. So all these things you can slope of the groundwater flow you can predict putting this West interpretation method only. And the isoresistivity contours you can prepare, and you can decide where should be your earth link should be the, where should be the foundation, where should be the construction should happen. All these things you can create using this type of the isoresistivity curves for the different current. This 160 meter current electrode spacing. That means up to approximately 160 meter depth. What is the variations happening? I could make out from this. So this, when you overlay one above the other, it will give an idea about which is the best area for doing any of your activities. And hard rock, where is the hard rock, at what depth? You can similar with 3D elevations and coloring as well as the contouring. Both you can join together and give a 3D picture of it. This is a real picture in borewell, but it will not give you any idea. But when you upload it like this, immediately you will understand what is the type. So laterite top terrain, how it varies. So in real, how it look like, all the borewells, the depth vary from place to place. So coastal terrains, you see, look at this coastal terrain area where the shallow depth, right, in laterite terrains, and even saltwater intrusions. I have taken about 5-6 in coastal stretch here, and saline water intrusion. You can see that very shallow. Very shallow area, 0.5 meter, 0.1 meter, within 1 meter depth, and some places within 0.5 meter depth, etc. This saltwater intrusions happens. So here you can, if it's a if a 2D picture, if you make, you can say saltwater intrusions, saltwater sand here, tomographic surveys. So fracture, which is not possible from this survey, you can tomography, you can identify where the joints were. So this is one for, you can understand, this is, I think, New Mangalore Port Trust, I was looking for the in berth. So they are interested whether any hard rocks are there in the berth which they are going to construct, they have to blast off. So you can see this curve here, suddenly saline water up to this, but about 20 meter depth, it starts very hard granitic zones. So another NMPT site here, look at the variations. Hard rock where it starts very shallow, 10 meter itself, it starts here. So another plot, the hard rock terrains, see it starts about 10 meter. So average 10 meter itself, some of the places, because according to that, they have to plan the berth depth of it. Digging operations has to be done based upon that. So this is all from the NMPT sites, different hard rock terrains. So earth resistant tomography, you can see, as I told you, put all these things together, the survey. Once you laid it, switching that will take care of it. You start to work, and continuously, if it is a leaching there, you can monitor from the remote way. You put it as a permanent structure and remote control you can use. 2D and 3D imaging techniques can be used here. And here there's, yeah. So how Venner and Gamma, I'm just switching over. This is how the SS electrode, this is in the tomography which I conducted. I showed the Vincent Hills which I conducted. So the first the layering, this one layout will be done here. Then the switch box will be the program computer, and it started sending current to next, it will switch over to the next two. Like that, it will be switching over, and finally you'll be getting a reading. Now, when you plot all these things, different methods are used for this. I showed you this road below security post where I was standing and taking the survey. So this is what I had to interpret, and I have to get whether here you can see that there is a low resistivity zone. And this place, it is from this, say 1.23 is very high porosity and very good conductivity here. So here this zone I found, and I conducted vertical electrical sounding, and I found that almost the same depth the water is available here, and they drilled it and got a very high. This is the, again, Guru Nanak Sanjay school. This is a boys school. The previous one was a girls school. It was a valley like this. So the valley also I copied here, but I couldn't find any, this value maximum is, minimum is 38.3. That was a dry. It is not a prosperous for the groundwater. So a filled up ground you can make out easily here in the hockey ground of them. It's a steep, the other side it's a steep one. So these are some of the things. Let's see here, dipole. Different methods also shows that the depth and where the water can be identified. This is in Vincent Hills, which I showed you. Then geotechnical applications, there are many groundwater levels, shear strength, bulk density, porosity, permeability, etc. And weak materials you can identify. So there is a case study which we made there in two only I presented here. This is near this, civil engineering department. This is, I think, Ottawa. There is a SPT value we have taken, and we have conducted resistivity survey at the same point. You can see that 8.05 meter and here -8. That means it is matching exactly where the granite I started in vertical electrical resistivity, where I got the value here 8 meter. Here it is, you can 8.1 meter. Same thing here, 8.05 meter. Almost very precisely it is coming where the hard rock starts. So another example is here. It is near Srinivas School of Engineering, next to the NITK campus. There the SPTN value here and the resistivity. You can see that matching almost. This is 6.6 meter where it starts, and here you can see that it's almost 7 point something it is coming. Very close to that it is coming here. So it proves that, and whatever interpretations made, silt, the thickness of it also similarly matching in this case. But what you required is a little bit of expertise, and we plotted this, corrected N values and apparent resistivity, and finally we came to a conclusion. Apparent resistivity, corrected N values, it was matching, and it goes to overall comparison is made, transverse section corrected value for all the holes, and it was matching almost 0.7192. So this shows that it's better to correlate with the transverse resistivity rather than apparent resistivity. So transverse resistivity has been taken because better correlation is found in that. So this way we can SPTN, which we are doing there, can be saved and can go for the geophysical methods. But what is required, some standardization should be made with this, each of the type of the area and terrains, it may vary. So once such a relation is known for a particular location, soil strength can be determined from the best results itself. So I'll conclude now because time is closing. So geophysics, which is a non-destructive type of task, have a lot of applications in engineering, from foundations to maintenance. I have shown you some of the things, whatever possible within the short span of time on an hour. And it's like a scanning study which can cross inside the earth using the simple principles of electromagnetic field of nature, seismic wave physics, and anomalies to create and construct the inside geometry and properties of materials. Beneath, using the knowledge of geology and geotechnology is also required for this knowledge of this, because interpretations you can blindly do it. So it's a fast and cost-effective, time-saving method to study the properties of soils and rocks beneath. And there are many more methods of geophysics, as I told in the beginning itself. Still, the potentiality of the geophysics is not explored. there are so many possibilities to explore which can be utilized for the civil engineering applications. Any questions, please? Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Really, it was a very informative session. We have few questions from the participants, sir. I will read one by one.
Yeah.
Sir, the first question is, when our aeromagnetic studies are conducted, can we use thermal infrared images to carry out mapping of rocks on the basis of variation in thermal inertia?
Of course, thermal inertia and thermal scanning, because different types of rocks will be reflecting light. The modes I'm saying, the spectral signatures vary. So different types of rocks will be reflecting back the energy and absorbing the energy in different way. So we can make out a bit of experience of these things. That is possible. What was the first question? I think this is the question. Am I right?
Yes, sir. This is the first question.
Yeah.
Sir, the next question is, how to measure moisture in a structure, extent of moisture permitted in a masonry structure?
Yeah, the best thing is electrical resistivity method, because as I told you, if the moisture is there, if you put the two electrodes, the current, it is very, if you put a bottle of water and keep the two electrodes, current will be easily passing through it, right? So in a concrete, the moisture, where you doubt it, put that in that area where you feel that, and send the current and measure it in the potential way, so that you can understand that moisture content is there or not, based upon the resistivity. If the more moisture content is there, conductivity will be very high. That means resistivity will be very low. So this way we can understand. I think some test has been conducted in NITK, Surathkal, under Dr. Logesh, and because my guide was Professor Logesh, and one research scholar did this techniques. You can refer that also.
Thank you, sir. Next question is, how we can identify clay from groundwater zones using geophysical methods?
Yeah, this requires, say I told you there are some standard values for this, but it varies from place to place. So clay and as I told you, all this interpretation, geology of the area, you should have at least an understanding. And if you don't know blindly, if you look at, say for example, a curve, if I get interpreting curve, it will be a curve which is plotted. It depends upon for this curve. Now, how will you know that whether it is because it's the curve is K? That means it is either it is a fracture zone, or it can be a water zone, it can be a clay zone. How will you vary? Now look at the pulling of it, right? So this is all rho 1 plus rho 2 plus rho 3. The rho 3 is a third layers. It is pulling down. Now, based upon that, the range of value, say for 0 to 50, if I look for 0 to 50 is usually a good potential aquifer zone. If it is in a coastal area, if it is coming around 20, 15, 5, etc., it will be, I have shown you some slides, some values, some plotting here, the coastal areas. So here you can see that in that area, here the resistance value is very less. It's shown in ohm meter, 60. Here you can see that 0, 0, 0.5, 1, etc. Very low values are the for this. But always it requires to distinguish between a freshwater and a clay. What is required is you should have at least a geological knowledge of the area.
Thank you, sir. Next question is there a IS code for resistivity method?
I'm not aware, sir. Sorry. Because resistivity method IS code means for what purpose? Because it's a method used in different field. IS code is meant for this standard method, or IS code for standard value which you are getting. Because for certain things, groundwater, we can't say that there's this within this range it comes water you will get. So IS code, I don't think that.
Sir, the last
maybe
question.
I don't know.
Okay, sir. Thank you, sir. The last question is, how effective geophysical exploration in locating groundwater? In many cases, they failed. Why?
Yeah, this is a good question. Actually, all the failures, maybe because of many reasons. One thing is, when you conduct a survey, manual influence will be a lot, because you are sending two of your workers or your assistants to two sites to put this roads. If there is a wire, cable, or a transmission line, because they are also creating electric. Many cases I found these problems. If a pipeline is there, if a cable line is there, if there is a electrical wire is the telephone line above this, because all these things are electromagnetic waves. So they will be inducing a waves. As I showed you, electromagnetic things from a flight, how they take it. Because yeah, there are chartered flights where you get this data also free. So I think the first question, that question was asked there. So chartered flights, the data is freely available also, some of the sites, and this data you can utilize, and NGRI sites or GSI sites, etc. Airborne surveys, if you visit, you will get this data also available there. So here, so manual influence one. Second thing is, blindly, without knowing the geology of the area, if you survey, your interpretations, you can do this interpretation. Say, for example, you got the resistance value and the thickness of it. Now, if you don't know the geology of the area, you will interpret it as a good potential zone. You may not say it is a saltwater intrusion is there. So, geology of the area is must. Some places you may get a dry zone. So, another case is there, failure is, you put a borewell, and the geologist will say, based upon the geophysical survey, he'll say that up to which depth this is the potential zone is there. Some people in the create on the this one for good yield, what they will do, they will go beyond the suggested zone. Now what happen is, there will be a dry fracture zone will be at the bottom, which the geologist might not have told you. He told that go up to 300 feet, 350 feet. There you have to stop because the fracture stops. Now the dry zone fracture zone will be below. Now some of the people, what they do, they will drill beyond the suggested page and it goes there. And already an aquifer in the top you got, a water you got in this top aquifer. And when it goes to a dry zone, the entire water will be going down and draining to that. And you won't get any water. This is another reason for failure. So there are many reasons for failure. Geophysical survey, as I told, manual errors will be there. And your instrument errors will be there. Then, as I told you, cable lines, pipelines, telephone lines, all these things you have to see, because these are all the problems. And always this thing should be a straight line, and interference. And even say, we say that the virgin zone is there, where we keep the instruments. Near the instruments, up to 2-3 meters, I don't allow people to walk around, because that will influence a lot. If you keep the instruments in an area, this area is a virgin zone. If any movement happens, there will be a conductivity. A self potential will be developed by you also standing here. Usually, when you go for a survey, what happens? All the people, curious people, will be coming and standing around, and it will be disturbed. And you can see that another thing is, there will be a crusher or something is working. That also will influence. So sometimes the vibrations will create a problem here. So there are so many reasons for these failures. But one more thing I'll tell you. Scientifically, if one failure happens, people will propagate. And what I have seen, the diviners and others, they give the sites, and if a failure happens, people will not talk about much. But anybody given scientific methods and this may be mistake of the person who conducted the survey also have the problems. I hope I answered for this, because it's a most interesting questions, and by experience I would say that even I have failure cases. I don't say that 100% I am successful in this. I think I have at least 5% failures happens in my surveys also. The reason is this: I have found many reasons for that, and wrong interpretation also may go in some crucial areas. And one more thing is, always the survey should be conducted parallel to the strike line. If you are conducting a perpendicular to strike line, what happens? Different beddings, it will be coming across. As a result, the combined value which you are getting, rho 1, rho 2, and the value which you are getting will be changed totally, and you will get a different values and your survey will be a failure. This is one. Another thing is it should be in a level ground, but most of the places you will not get a level ground. You'll be getting a ground one side up, one side a valley, etc. And such problems will come. So only by field experience and expertise, you may rectify these things, overcome some things. And as I told you, the geology of the area is a must. It will be very difficult because I know I told no Tripura when I went and surveyed in the Tripura Central University campus and outside 2-3 places when I surveyed, I was not knowing the geology of the area. Then first I collected from the faculty there was, please give me the geology of the area, at least a understanding. Then I took the geology when I plotted the data, whether it is matching with the geology of the area. This is very important. So if you are not knowing this, at least check the open well, a quarry there nearby or road cutting there. That will give you some clue about the geology of the area, at least in surface, and you can match. The first 2 layers are matching topsoil when you match with the things, next layer when you match with the things, probably the other things also can match. Hope I have answered a little bit of the questions.
Thank you very much for answering all our queries, sir. For the safer design of foundation of any civil engineering structure, it is very much important to know the safe bearing capacity of the soil. To determine the nature of soil and presence of groundwater table at a proposed construction site, subsurface exploration is very much essential. Even though there are many other subsurface exploratory techniques, geophysical method of soil exploration gained more importance because large area can be investigated in a short period of time. It is very simple, it saves time, and the field work is not laborious. In this context, I hope all our participants got benefited from your valuable thoughts about geophysical exploration and their application in the field of civil engineering. Sir, once again, on behalf of AICTE, ISTE and Department of Civil Engineering, Jyoti Institute of Technology, we are very much thankful to you, sir, for accepting our invitation even in your busy schedule. We expect same kind of support and association with our institute for conducting more and more technical programs like this in the future also, sir. Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir, very much for the opportunity. And I suggest that geophysics lab also should be included in future in civil engineering curriculum so that students will come to know that how to do it so that it will be easy for them. Thank you for the opportunity, all of you.
Thank you, sir.
And
Thank
all
you, sir.
who are patient listening.
Thank you, sir. Dear participants, the attendance and feedback link is available in Zoom chat box. The next session will start exactly at 2 p.m. It was a very, very important and informative session on new education policy. Thank you one and all for all your support. We will meet exactly at 2 p.m.